Okay, good. Okay, so we're running out of time already, so I'll just be quick, won't take up too much of your time. Taboo. So I'm going to walk you through the issue of taboo, which is very prickly at the moment, considering all the 18C stuff, but I probably won't get too serious. But anyway, let's have some fun. And we'll have some questions at the end, I believe. Is that right? Okay, so that's me. Start with a video.
They're gone.
We're skeletons. We've got to be really, really quiet.
It's always good to start with a
Jake!
I thought it would be funny.
That pretty much sums up my idea of taboo. Just got no response in the audience there. So we're looking at the idea of making comments that may fall flat, may agitate, may cause change, may, I think, you know, you might be thinking you're funny, but you're possibly not for some people. So you might know my work through Golden Plains drawings or doing stuff on tea towels. This one's called Melbourne, which I did a video for, stuff for readings, Triple R, and the regular cartoon I do called Overheard, which this one came out last week. Some people at the David Hockney exhibition, that one almost makes me want to vomit. I also dabble occasionally in sort of sneaky and cheeky cartoons. The Get Fucked Cake was one of those which got turned into a t-shirt and also a hanky. So yes, talking about taboo. So this is my loose definition. I didn't want to do an Oxford Dictionary one, but basically it's stuff that you shouldn't touch with a barge pole. Now it can be a taboo or it can be taboo, so there's two different usages of the word. But basically I like to think taboo is something like this, and it comes from David Remnick, who's the editor of The New Yorker, and he said that his cover artists are instructed to do work that goes too far enough. So it's kind of pushing the envelope but not pushing it too far. And we might see the consequences of pushing it too far later on. So as I said, today is not about 18C, although we will touch on it a little bit, but is more about going too far enough. So this is basically what I think taboo is. In a pure universe, there is no evil. In the same way, there is really no taboo, unless someone says that it is taboo. So I sit down at my desk every day and I try to think of cartoons that will possibly go too far enough, that will agitate, which will make people laugh, which will make people think of something that they haven't thought of before, or see perhaps a deeper truth in something that they didn't know existed before. So I sit down on this desk and I look at a massive sheet of paper and I draw and I doodle and I think about a topic and try to zero in on the funny or the risky or the taboo element of it. So this one here, I'm thinking, and excuse me if you've seen this before, but this is me thinking up a cartoon to celebrate the anniversary of the birth of Venn, who invented the Venn diagrams. So I'm doodling around and I'm thinking up different graphic solutions to the idea of Venn diagrams, and eventually hit on this one. But I was talking the other day to people about this one, and they're all quite young, and they probably didn't know what a diaphragm is. Do they still even sell them? I don't know. Okay, so let's position us where this sort of risky taboo stuff is. So if we sort of say that we have a graph which is naughty along the bottom and nice along the side, we can possibly say that the safe area is somewhere on the nice axis, and offensive is somewhere along the naughty line along there. Could even be further. So what we're trying to do is just to find some sort of middle ground, which is kind of generally in this area here. Not to put a too fine a point of it, but eventually what you want to do is to get to the sweet spot, which is the very tip of where the two things join. You want to be offensive, but you still want to be nice. As an example of this is one of my nice cartoons. It's Pinocchio waking up saying he slept like a log. It doesn't offend anybody. It's so cute and lovely, and you know, if you're offended by that, then you know, go back to the monastery, I think. But on the other end, there's something like this. It's my map of Tassie and the rest of Australia. It's not especially funny, but it's sort of trying to push the idea of dirtiness and ridiculousness and everything like that. This is one by John Callaghan. Now, it's probably hard to read, but he says, my technique for rectal examination is somewhat different in that I'm gay and have no arms. So he's pretty much off the sweet spot there. But today I'm just going to talk in this zone. Sorry to drag that joke out too much. So we're looking at nice cartoons, which this one could be a comment on, you know, horse racing and the abuse of horses for the pursuit of human happiness, but we won't go there. Maybe something about dogs and their owners. Something even about cancer and getting stuff checked. This is all the sort of risky stuff that cartoonists like to flirt with. So why would you want to create this taboo stuff in the first place? Isn't there enough misery in the world? But perhaps it's cool. Maybe, you know, the hipsters like it. Maybe the millennials love it. They obviously do when they buy cards like this. And maybe standing out makes you sort of marketable, which this great guy does himself. So there may be some ulterior motives, perhaps. I'm not saying that these guys do have ulterior motives, but there's benefits in dabbling with taboo. I like to think that you can also perhaps change what people think to present new messages, to say something new. This came out when Trump got into power. The whole debate about vaccinations, perhaps there's something that cartoonists and graphic designers can add to the debate, or even to the rise of nationalism in Australia. I wear it with pride and a fair bit of xenophobic rage. But it may even work on a local level or an art community level. You know, we all hate hard rubbish and we all hate video art, so let's do a cartoon about it. Same deal with banal stuff. Nobody wants to hear about how you hurt your toe, then 2 weeks later a doctor told you it was actually broken. I think we've all encountered people that have told us that story. Maybe it's even better to be vague about where your allegiances lie, to not actually take a stand on something. So this idea came to me driving along a highway. One lane is for people who go under the limit by 5 kilometres an hour with a smug sense of self-righteousness, and the other lane is for people who go over the limit, tailgating and incredulous glares when passing. Same deal with people walking up escalators. And also I kind of like this idea of glorifying something that's awful, but giving it a degree of respect or something. But yeah, maybe you just want to ruffle some feathers. And when David Bowie died, I noticed everyone was a David Bowie fan all of a sudden. Tattoos, they're off, you know, very sort of ripe for the teasing. Trust me, it'll date. And even farmers markets, you know, right up there in sort of things you can tease. Farmers market here this Saturday, and the guy's saying, haven't we suffered enough? And which reminds me of the Bruce Eric Kaplan cartoon of a man and a woman talking, and the man said, I went to farmers markets with my first wife, I don't think I could do it again. So I'm just going to whip through some of these, which hopefully paint a picture of a little bit of angst, annoyance, agitation, dissatisfaction, and hopefully pushing this idea of taboo, which, you know, not something you should normally make a joke about, but let's make a joke about it anyway and see where it takes us. So this came when, around the debate of people knocking down buildings or not because it had a Banksy on it. But what if the cancer had Banksy on it? We're going to leave it in, it's got a Banksy on it. M Magazine is a part of the Sunday Age. This was a mock-up for a cartoon I did for them, which is based on a real overheard, and the little girl has come to her mum with a gollywog, and this actually happened, and the mum says, no honey, you can't have that puppet, it's racist, it's a racist puppet. They didn't like that, so I just changed it so it would be like this, and a little bit less, I don't know if it's less offensive or what, but yeah. Or maybe we just want to have fun when we're dealing with taboo. Maybe we just want to be silly. This is an old one of mine. Shit brooches. Sorry about the size of the text, but Daryl Summers as a brooch would be pretty hard to deal with. And Coxie, who I don't even know if he's on TV anymore, or he could be dead even, but it was funny having Coxie as Australia's inaugural pap smear ambassador. Shudder. Okay, so most of us in our daily lives, when we go off to work after this, we probably won't deal with taboo. We won't go there, mainly because it alienates people. You know, it draws too much heat, and we don't want to be political. The client would say, look, just don't go there, it's not worth it. But if we do it right, it can really pay off. And there's heaps of examples of graphic design and art that deals with risky stuff that, if it's done right, can actually be successful. And this is a great cover of Lolita, showing the domestic world, if you know the novel, the domestic world of the novel, plus the sort of sexiness, let's face it, of the text that is discussed there. Or it can fail absolutely spectacularly, and you might have seen this in the news recently, of the Washington Post putting out a supplement, and the cover all about the women's march and resistance around Trump and everything, but they used the male symbol for man instead of female. So comedians are one of the few people and groups who I guess are expected, and it's their responsibility to deal with taboo. So what is it? I've talked a little bit about what is taboo before. So here's a quick list. I won't read these out, but you may have some more of these of your own. And it can be said, I think, that you can make a joke or a cheeky comment about anything. Even, you know, you might be able to say, and I guess what I'm saying is you're not making a joke about the actual thing, you're making a joke around the topic of that thing. Because when you make a joke or a comment about that thing, you are perhaps attacking the thing itself. So Larry David,
So I was at the pool yesterday. Your son. I saw your son at the pool.
Yeah.
Kid's got some penis on him. It's pretty good.
What are you saying?
Your son. His penis.
Wait, what are you saying that me for?
Hey,
Remember,
it's a compliment. What's the big deal?
What's the compliment?
Well, how's it bad? How's it bad? He's got a nice big penis. So what?
Well, I'm not talking about your wife's tits. I mean, this is rude.
You can say my wife has nice tits as long as it's complimentary. Come on, you.
Hugh, not you. Hugh, okay?
Hugh.
You may not agree or disagree with Larry David. Are you, in that instance? We'll move on. Maybe the New Zealand accent is something that is ripe for jokes. Missive garage sale. I thought you were just from New Zealand. Aboriginal issues, abuse, domestic violence, war. This cartoon, and this is one, and this one is an exact replica of a school we levelled. An AWOL division at the Anzac Day parade. Simpson and his donkey, perhaps. Ashton, look this way and act wounded. Now, you might think that, why am I attacking these things? And some of you might think, I'm not attacking them at all. I'm actually making a comment about people's response and reaction to Anzac Day. Yeah, I don't want to explain myself too much, but I'll let you think about that. It slouches the other way, Private. Some more topics. Botox, emojis, mental illness, all wrapped into one cartoon.
It's 9 hours.
My life is crumbling around me. Tattoos, we've covered that. Puppy farms, S&M. Get up, you're not meant to enjoy the whipping. I seem to have done a lot of horse racing cartoons because I think it's so bad, horse racing. Smokers who look like hookers. Piercings, fanny packs. Fitballs are certainly ripe for ridicule. There's always someone in the office with a fitball. This was hugely controversial. They tried to bring back this about 5 or 10 years ago and faced immense resistance. The new logo doesn't have the woman's breasts, the mermaid's breasts. So moving on. Parents who yell at their kids at sport, stop having fun, play some proper football and start making up for my inadequacies as a deeply pathetic parent who needs to scream at 7-year-olds. Graphic novels, does anyone really read them? Tell me you like graphic novels. Illnesses, the Holocaust, swearing, and of course sex. Another horse racing one. Easter. Okay, so here's an example where I tried to be not too safe, but not too offensive. So I wanted to create a cartoon about free-range chickens, or just the idea of free range. I thought it was kind of funny. So I'm sketching around here, and I thought perhaps being free range is a noble thing, or something you can mention at parties and things or when you're introducing to your parents. So Penny, Peter tells me you're free range. Mum, Dad, this is Penny. Penny's free range. And especially cute little drawing there, not really a chicken, but more of a duck. But then I kind of wanted to push it a little bit more, play up this idea of free rangeness. Perhaps it is a bit more sexy or racist or cheeky or dark or something like that. So moving it into the barnyard, have you ever had free-range chicken? Trust me, you can never go back once you've had free range. This is all unpublished stuff, by the way, until now. I've heard you're free range, so it's getting kind of cheeky and saucier. And I'm sort of looking at this and I'm thinking, nah, this is too much. This is going to be published in a national newspaper. I'm not going to push it too far. Why? Because I think it's just too dark or too sexy or too wrong or something. I don't know, it's a very vague sort of, if you imagine a penis drawing and there's a line. No, it's a little bit too kind of hard to pin down why. So then I brought it back to these two hens talking about being free range, and I played around with the line because getting the words right, as anyone would know in copywriting, is so important to get the nuance of the language right, to get the beat and the rhythm and the tone right. And eventually I settled on this one. I can't help feeling he only likes me because I'm free range. It's softer. It's a softer sort of ending, and hopefully is not, you know, super hilarious, but gets across this idea of free range being something kind of desirable. So what else should you avoid? I know, stupid children. So 2 cartoons about NAPLAN, which is a test that kids do at school. Remember, son, it's not a reflection of you as a person, rather your feeble, hilariously moronic brain. And your NAPLAN results don't mean you're stupid, just stupid in relation to everyone else. Which might hint at my kind of idea of what I think about NAPLAN. And this one here, as any parent would know, so to get away with stuff, you have to basically have courage of your convictions, and that's not an easy thing to get. And I guess it pertains to every part of design and art and creative culture. You have to believe in yourself and assume some kind of authority, because if you're doing it half-assed, you're not going to convince anybody. You're going to come off as looking half-assed. So most of us rabble-rousers are from the left, and we do wield a degree of power because stuff is published and people see it, and maybe things change or people get offended or whatnot. So you're in a tricky situation where you have to be careful, I guess. So here's some examples. Bruce Petty did this one about Anzac Day, which is more savage than my Anzac Day cartoons. It's very hard to read, but you probably don't need to read it. It's an Anzac Day parade with someone from a battle, you know, half dead, crawling through the crowd. Very graphically strong there. And Luba Lukova is a fantastic graphic designer who did a lot of work in the 80s and 90s in America. Beautiful work that I think is quite strong. But sometimes you can fail, and we've seen a lot of that in the news recently. This one was from America, where they're trying to make a joke about the cramped airplanes and flights. But he's comparing it, this is an American cartoonist, to the slave ships. Not in good taste, I would say. And he deeply apologised for this. And more recently, we've seen Bill Leak, the late Bill Leak. He's done some amazing work, but has also flirted very dangerously, I would say, in a very negative way with terrible issues. So are you going too far enough, or are you going too far? This New Yorker cover received a lot of heat. Barry Blitt, who is one of their stable of New Yorker cover cartoonists, did this just before Obama was elected, basically sort of drawing him as a jihadi terrorist with his wife, and he thought it was such a joke that this guy could get labelled as someone like that, when in fact he was completely the opposite. It was so obvious he was the opposite, so by drawing him like this, that was the joke. But the right in America picked it up as something saying, yeah, you got it right, he is. So that was a very, very serious time. So when you do stuff like that, you ask yourself, are my jokes merely jokes? Am I a racist? You know, should I publish? You start to question everything you know about yourself and all the work that you do. So this is one that I have thought is funny, but I don't know, these days I think it's probably a bit mean. She does look like one of Santa's elves, but in fact, Lewis, that's a crack whore. But people know that I'm joking, right? Here's another one about, in fact, before she was a media whore, she was an actual whore. So how do we work this out? We could ask people, we could talk to people, we could show our work to people. Earlier this year, or last year, I did a couple of colouring in books, and an American edition was published, and they wanted to change some things. So this is one of the things that they changed, and we don't have any more notebooks to give away, but spot the difference? Does anyone? Yeah, so they wanted to remove the poo from the dog's bum. The Australians loved it, but the Americans didn't like it. So taboo, yeah? So continuing on, you have to ask yourself, are you being vindictive? Are you bullying? Or are you being cheeky? This was a little animation of Jesus I did for SBS. It was based around Sean McAuliffe's new show where he said, he was talking about a book that he found talking about Jesus who came to America. So I did Jesus riding a horse. I don't know, my mum wouldn't like it as a Christian. She definitely didn't like this one, which she texted me and said it's probably in bad taste. I did run this past some Christians that I knew, and they said it, didn't offend them and seemed fine, so I went ahead with it. This one here came out when the debate about Goods doing his traditional dance during the game, which is fantastic, but there are a lot of people saying that they didn't like it. So this is kind of, well, I was hopefully trying to show the snobbiness and let's face it, the racism of some people in the world. You might also want to think about how much someone is offended, which seems a bit strange. Margaret Court came out in the news saying that she didn't support gay marriage. So I did this cartoon. There's a Margaret Court in the tennis centre. And so, okay, so she doesn't support gay marriage, so what about mixed doubles? It's kind of, what about doubles? People who are into diets, you can tease them, right? It's not too offensive. This was something about me looking at stuff online, kind of teasing myself a little bit here, and then with Mrs. Doubtfire at the end. Another question you can ask yourself is, do they possibly deserve to be teased? Australia Post is notoriously slow. Yes, I think they are. People who tell you their dreams, yes, they deserve to be teased. People who take up too much room on the train, yes, they deserve to be teased. Pedophiles, yes, they deserve to be teased. Same deal here. They raided his house and found literally millions of kids' names and addresses. Ricky Nixon, who was alleged to have a relationship with someone under the age of 18, this wasn't published, but did he deserve to be teased? I'm not sure of the result of the case or what happened with that one, but I like the idea of teasing a little bit just around the topic of that thing. Another question you can ask yourself is, what is the spirit of the joke? Bald people, Baldy wins an award. Is it offensive? Is it attacking? Is it harassing? Something like this? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Not for me to say. Mercedes Corpy, Chappelle's sister. Terrible family situation, but I really was attracted to this clip of her in a very sort of dark moment.
I didn't even know we had the bloody trial! They didn't take any of our witnesses into account!
I think that's the quote. I didn't even know we had a bloody trial. They didn't take any of our witnesses.
I didn't even know we had the bloody trial! They didn't take any of our witnesses into account!
which I turned into a little stool showing her like that. Why did I do it? I don't know. I think it was kind of funny at the time. The Yeah flag, which you might know quite well by John Campbell, great flag. But I did a series of paintings and artworks based on improving Australian art. So I did the Yes flag, which you might have seen upstairs here at the Good Copy, Sydney Noland, improving it by supplying the bit that was missing. How will you ever know if you've gone far enough? A lot of my female friends that I spoke with talking about fashion-related stuff, telling me what's cool and what's not cool. Harem pants, I don't know, maybe they're fashionable, I don't know. This was done a few years ago, talking about tights and whether the tights aren't pants. But of course we have things like this which turn up, which makes you absolutely reconsider the joke that you made 3 years ago. The whole debate about wearing what you want, and is it even wrong? Who cares? Another thing is about teasing people's weight. This is a cartoon I did comparing myself as a baby with Clive Palmer and a sumo wrestler. But of course, the thing of fat shaming is a major, or anti-fat shaming is a major thing. So now how do we think about those cartoons? How do I think about them? Perhaps I'm a little bit embarrassed now. So unfortunately, there is no sort of definitive answer to any of these questions. Unfortunately, it's a little bit to do with the vibe. So the best I can suggest to you guys is do your research, consider the context where your work will appear, don't work alone, talk to other people, show your work to other people, run it past perhaps even the people who might be directly related to the work that you do, and see what their reaction is. Further reading, these books are great. You should all have Smile in the Mind. But there's some interesting ones in these other two, even if you're not really into cartoons. They show cartoons that were rejected and they describe why they were rejected, and you can possibly see that they go too far. They're too much of everything. And some other cartoonists who you might like. So there was John Callahan there, but Bruce Eric Kaplan and Shanahan, who's quite good. And the last thought is be afraid, be very afraid, because if you make a mistake, your career could be over. Okay, so I always end with this one. I think we have time for questions. I'm insulting you now.
We do. Let's give a big hand to Oslo, please.